He never said it out loud, not to friends, not to family, not to anyone who ever asked him about love. But the truth is, every time someone gets close, every time feelings start to bloom, he finds himself taking a step back. Not because his heart has closed. His emotions are still there, still delicate, still capable of being moved just like before. But after the last time he gave his whole heart away, he realized what left wasn't just the other person. It was him. He lost himself in the way he loved, quietly, devotedly, sacrificing too much. On the outside, he's still doing fine, still polite, calm, able to chat happily with anyone. He doesn't slam the door to his heart shut. But if you look closely, you'll see. Beneath that calmness is a thin layer of caution, but very real. Not everyone is sensitive enough to notice, and even fewer understand why. They just see a mature, calm man who seems tired of love. But no one knows. Deep down, he carries an invisible fear. It's not the fear of losing someone. It's the fear of losing himself. One more time. People just see him as a minimalist man, at ease with life. He drives an old RV across the States every spring, stops at roadside gas stations, drinks cheap coffee, smiles at strangers, then leaves like the wind. No attachments, no rush. But no one knows he once loved, really loved. Loved so much he gave up his dreams to hold on to a relationship he thought would last forever. He didn't lose his possessions. He didn't go bankrupt. There was no dramatic divorce. What he lost was the belief that when you give your all, you get to stay. Love isn't what exhausts him. It's the way people love him. Every gesture of care comes with an unspoken expectation. Every promise carries an invisible list of conditions. Every conversation that begins with closeness ends with him needing to change something. He used to think he was loved, but as time went on, he felt like a project that needed to be fixed. He doesn't hate anyone, but he understands not everyone who loves you truly sees you. After everything, he didn't go back. He didn't run away either. He chose a different path. He started living alone, not because there was no one by his side, but because he needed a place where he didn't have to explain why he was quiet, didn't have to choose words carefully when talking about the past, didn't have to always be okay so others wouldn't worry. And surprisingly, he felt lighter on days when no one texted, felt more at peace during meals when no one asked, "Why are you eating so little?" He isn't afraid of love. He's just afraid of losing himself again in its name. He once cut back everything to fit someone else, reduced his personality, reduced his laughter, even gave up little habits like making coffee every morning because it bothered her. And the painful thing is, even after giving up so much, it still wasn't enough. He was still criticized, still not right. From then on, he understood, if someone can't love you as you are, changing yourself will only make you disappear faster. On his journey through the truck stops of America, he met other men like himself. They don't talk much, they don't complain, but their eyes understand each other deeply. One used to be a doctor, now he raises dogs in Montana. One used to run a company, now he teaches cooking in New Mexico. No one tells the full story. They just ask one simple question, "You good?" and nod slowly. These are relationships without expectation. No one fixes anyone. No one saves anyone. They just exist together as they are. If one day love comes back, he won't reject it. But he won't open the door with hurried hands anymore. He won't love if it means stepping out of himself. Won't share if what's private is used as a weakness. Won't commit if that commitment blurs the lines of freedom. Love to him is when both can be themselves, not redraw anyone, not reprogram anyone, not control anyone. He never really closed his heart. He just changed the password. Love, to him, is still beautiful. But now, it must come with empathy, not a script. It must start with eyes that truly see, not a description of who someone should be. And if no one comes, he doesn't feel regret, because he still has himself. And this time, that's what he won't trade. He once lived in Colorado, in a small tin-roofed house near a pine forest. Life was simple then. A neat kitchen, a reading room with shelves he built himself, and a woman he loved with everything he had. She didn't ask for anything grand, didn't need him to change too much, just needed him to be more present. And he tried, not with roses or promises, but with the little changes he made in daily habits. He stopped weekend mountain climbs to come home for dinner. quit his longtime friends because she wasn't comfortable with them, stepped away from a startup project because she feared he'd get too busy again. Each decision was small, but little by little, he left himself behind without realizing it. He doesn't blame anyone. Everything happened so naturally. Every day came with a convincing reason for him to give up a little part of his personality, his space, an old piece of himself he thought didn't fit anymore. Then one day, he woke up, made coffee, turned on his old playlist, and realized he didn't like those songs anymore. Not because his taste had changed, but because he had forgotten who he used to be when he listened to them. She left on a quiet weekday morning, as gently as she came. No arguments, no clear reason, just, "I don't feel connected anymore." He didn't beg, didn't ask why, because at that moment, what choked him wasn't losing her, but realizing he didn't know what was left of himself to keep her. People think men fear being alone, but no. What scares him is loving again and losing everything it took years to rebuild. That fear doesn't come from never being loved. It comes from having been loved and still losing everything. He didn't cry, didn't vent, didn't look for someone to unload the weight inside him, not because he didn't hurt, but because he was taught that he wasn't allowed to hurt like that. Since he was young, every time he fell and tears welled up, someone would say, "Boys don't cry." When he grew older, whenever he lost something he really wanted, people said, "Men have to swallow it down." And then, when he had his heart broken, felt lost direction, the words he heard most were, "Hang in there. Everyone goes through that. Just find someone new." But no one asked, "Are you okay?" A simple question, but almost non-existent for grown men. He still met friends, still drank beer every weekend, still talked baseball, cars, politics. But none of them really looked him in the eye, put a hand on his shoulder, and waited for a real answer when asking, "Hey, honestly, how are you these days?" And so, he learned to do what most men like him do. He swallowed. Not just stories, but layers of emotions. He swallowed sadness under a calm gaze, swallowed disappointment under a forced laugh, swallowed all those nights when he just wanted someone to sit next to him and say nothing, just so he could breathe. He didn't choose loneliness. He just learned to endure it in silence because every time he had opened up before, the listener only said, "You'll be fine," or changed the subject. So, he stopped sharing. Not out of coldness, but because when he once told the truth, no one knew what to do with that pain. After all he's been through, he doesn't love the same way anymore. He once loved with pure emotion, with a wide-open heart, ready to receive. But now, everything passes through an invisible filter. No one sees it, but he always feels it. Every woman he meets after that, no matter how kind, smart, or beautiful, is unconsciously compared, not with anyone specific, but with the old wound inside him. Not to judge, but to ask himself, will this take me back to where I was burned? He no longer looks with first spark excitement, but with survival instinct. He hears every seemingly normal word, but his ears choose differently. A teasing comment about the friends he hangs out with, a string of questions when he doesn't reply quickly, a look when he refuses to share something because he's not ready. To others, these might be signs of care. To him, they're warning sirens, not because he's too sensitive, but because peace inside him is no longer optional. It's the one thing he will not trade, not even for the most charming smile or the most passionate moment. Some say he's picky, but the truth is, he no longer needs a relationship to complete himself. He needs companionship that doesn't carry hidden demands, and if that's too rare, he chooses silence, not because he fears love, but because he once paid too high a price for something he thought was love, but turned out to be a trap that made him lose himself. Love doesn't always come with fights or accusations. Sometimes it comes gently, too gently for you to notice, and that's why you don't see clearly when it starts taking away little pieces of you. At first, it's a text during lunch break before you can reply. The second one comes with a playful tone. "Did you forget me?" You smile, think it's cute, and you put down what you're doing to answer faster. Then, a few times you cancel plans with close friends because she says, "I feel uncomfortable when you go out with them." You think, well, better not make the person you love worry. You stop weekend hikes, stop playing guitar at night because the sound makes it hard to sleep. You start changing the way you dress, the cafes you choose, even the way you reply to texts to be shorter, on tone, clear, no misunderstanding. No one forces you. It's just everything you change, at first, comes from the softest suggestions. No arguments, no fights, but in return, layer by layer, you disappear. One afternoon, in the RV parked on the edge of a small town, you make coffee and look out at an empty lot. The wind blows softly. Silence. And for the first time in months, you sit there and ask yourself, where was I in that relationship? No one hurt you in an obvious way. No drama, just fog. It wrapped around you every day. Soft, gentle, hidden behind care. And you kept walking like that until you were lost without knowing when you strayed. He still smiles, still greets at the right time, still jokes politely if there are strangers at the party, and if anyone asks about love, he just smiles lightly and says, "You deserve someone better." No bitterness, no complaints, no sighs. Just that he doesn't try anymore. He no longer gets on dating apps, no longer looks for someone to talk to at 1 a.m., no longer tells what he likes, where he's been, what little habits need to be respected, not because he doesn't want closeness, but because now he just wants peace. Silence, to him, is no longer a sign of unhealed wounds, but a deliberate choice. Opening up once made everything he built collapse in a few months, not because of betrayal, but because opening too soon brought expectations, changes, and a rhythm no longer his own. And what he lost wasn't in a breakup. It was the feeling that he could no longer hold himself up once love swept in. From then on, he became cautious, not because he lost faith, but because faith now is placed in stillness. Some say he's cold, but the truth is, he was once warm, so warm that he kept nothing for himself. And now, he doesn't want to lose more, not because he fears pain, but because what he rebuilt after it all fell apart is too precious to risk again. He realized late that not everyone who loves you truly sees you. Many times, in relationships that seemed sincere, he still felt he wasn't a person, but a role, a shoulder to lean on when she was tired, a wallet always full at the right time, a shoulder expected to understand, to yield, to forgive no matter what happened. He once thought that was love, but the more time passed, the clearer he saw. He wasn't loved for who he was, but for what he could provide. Stability, listening, unlimited patience, and a loyalty that was almost immovable. He became a pillar, but eventually, he had no place left to stand. No one asked, "Are you tired?" Who are content? Are you tired? Do you still have something just for yourself? Are you still yourself in this relationship? They needed him steady, but no one asked if he was breaking somewhere inside. The biggest fear isn't being left, but staying only to fulfill someone else's needs. Being loved as a provider, not as a person. That feeling is like standing in a luxurious house but with no corner of it truly yours. From the day he understood that, he no longer looked for someone to share life with. He only looks, if at all, for someone sensitive enough not to turn him into a tool. If there isn't, he accepts moving on alone, not because he wants distance, but because he knows being loved without being truly seen is also a way to lose yourself quietly. He never fully shut the door to his heart. He just doesn't open it the old way anymore. Love, if it comes back someday, will have to arrive at a different pace, lighter, more mindful, without sweeping promises, without hidden expectations, without making him abandon himself to keep someone. He no longer wants to enter relationships that start with praise, then quickly turn into an unspoken contract of change. He doesn't want someone to love him, then slowly rewrite him to make him more suitable. If someone comes and can't accept his silence as a real part of him, he won't explain much. He will just smile and step back, gently, like a door closing on its own when no one holds it. Now, what he holds with both hands is no longer a relationship, but the peace within the thing that was once shattered, once traded away for emotions he thought were love, but were actually control. If it's not right, he won't argue, won't clarify, won't bother untangling misunderstandings, because someone who truly understands won't force him to leave his own safe space just to stay. And if one day love knocks on the door, it will not be welcomed by a man craving romance. but by a man who has gone through romance and kept only the one thing he trusts. Respect that doesn't demand sacrificing yourself for affection. He still hopes, but his hope is no longer loud. He doesn't look for someone to fill the void, because he has learned to live with that void and turn it into his own space to breathe. He doesn't need rescuing, doesn't need anyone to soothe old wounds. He just hopes. If someone steps in, they won't see love as a privilege, but as respect. Respect for a man who has faced loss. Respect for the silence he keeps, not because he's cold, but because he was hurt by opening too soon. Respect for the boundaries he spent half his life rebuilding after tearing them down just to be loved. If love returns one day, this time, it must come with the understanding that the peace inside him is not by chance. It was built with patience, with many days resisting temptations so he wouldn't lose himself again. And if no one comes, he's still okay, because this time, he's not looking to be filled. He just guards the one thing he will never sacrifice again, the peace inside. If you've ever feared loving again, not because you don't know how to love, but because you once lost yourself by loving too much, know that you are not alone. Just leave one line, short but true. I choose to keep my peace. And if you find this video meaningful, share it with others and hit subscribe to get the latest videos. Thank you, and see you again.